before you can have everything. You have to experience nothing.
What? Pathetic.
Nick, my first question is for you because I feel like I've seen you do everything on the big screen. So when this script comes your way, what is it about it that makes you say, I can maybe expand my craft as an actor by tackling this story and this character?
Well, I just love the title to begin with, The Surfer. I grew up in California. I would take the bus to the Santa Monica Pier and watch all the surfers, and as a young man, like 11, 12, and wanting to be a surfer. So I thought, that's great. I could play a character known as the Surfer. And then I read the script, and I thought, well, this is different. This is weird. This is alternative. This is a non-linear narrative. I have no idea what's about to happen. And it's got me turning the pages. And so, and then I knew Lorcan's work, Vivarium, and I thought, well, he has a sense of humor, and he's able to bring the chaos and infuse some humor in it. So I thought it would be a good collaboration.
Bring the chaos. That's such a good way to describe Lorcan's work here. So Lorcan, now for you in terms of working with Nick, again, like a one-of-a-kind powerhouse in this industry, what is something you were able to accomplish with this character that is specific to him being in the role?
I think the whole film, really, because like you'll see it's a film that's pretty much told through just his subjective experience of the few days that he spends in this movie. So like, the audience experiences everything as the character experiences everything. So it was always going to be quite intense and would have this this arc starting out as quite dramatic and then becoming weirder, and there's violence and there's action and there's comedy and there's all sorts of going on in the film, and there's not many people who could pull that off, really, and tracking that with Nick on set in this, we also like a sense of adventure. So going off to Australia, a little town called Yalling up about 3 hours south of Perth to make this film together was just great. I mean, all the stars aligned, I think, on this one.
It looks incredible. Nick, I'm going to let you give Lorcan some flowers now because I love his filmography, and I love in particular the fact that every single film he makes feels so uniquely his own. So can you tell me something that you saw him do on set that maybe speaks to that singularity?
I think what it is that lends a distinction to Lorcan is that he has a unique sense of humor that is entirely his own, and you feel it in the movies. Like I said, even if he's bringing the chaos, you can feel that undercurrent of humor. And an example of that I think of fondly on the set was that phone that had a cord that wasn't attached to anything, that was just always around in my pocket or holding on to it as the surfer, and I didn't know where the prop phone was. And I said, we got to shoot, and I don't know where the phone is. I don't know where the phone is. And then Lorcan went somewhere, and he came back with the phone with the dangling cord, and he went, "It's for you." So that kind of comedy that's a quick wit, and it takes a minute to understand what's happening, but that's kind of like the experience of shooting the surfer and watching the surfer.
All right, I got 2 more questions before we let the movie roll for everybody. The first one was kind of inspired by your director's statement. So you made a movie that takes place in Australia. Nick, you're American. Lorcan, you're Irish.
Yeah.
What is it about coming at this story from the outsider perspective that you think enhances it?
Yeah, and our cinematographer is Polish, so like we're kind of an odd bunch walking into a bar. But I think the character being an outsider and us being an outsider also follows this tradition of Australian cinema a little bit, like Ted Ketchoff being Canadian, making Wake and Fright, and Nick Rogue being British, making Walkabout. So there was already a kind of, the door was cracked open a little bit, and that's what we wanted to kind of do our version of an exploitation film, but a contemporary kind of take on it.
And now to tease some specifics here. We don't want to give anything away, but this is a psychological thriller. It's kind of meant to feel like a dream. So is there a specific part of the movie that I guess demanded the most workshopping in order to fully wrap your mind around what you needed to do to achieve the goal of that scene?
There's one scene that it didn't really workshop it. It just took a little bit of figuring out how to edit it and shoot it and get to the audience to a point where they'd kind of believe. But I mean, I can't tell you what it is because you're about to watch the film, but it's sort of like his character almost splitting off and becoming like 2 people.
That's a good tease. I like that. Nick, do you have a moment?
A moment in particular. There were so many different moments. I mean, mostly it was a kind of fascination with the lenses that Lorcan was using and different effects. He had water on a mirror and it was reflecting off my face, and he was creating an in-camera place of like almost like a fluid place, like a dream, and it enhanced the narrative, making it more dream logic, and even I don't want to give anything away. You haven't seen the movie yet, but I mean it informed in terms of flashbacks and forward cuts that this character was processing something. And what I like are enigmatic narratives, nonlinear narratives, alternative narratives and approaches. I don't want something that's like a pop song getting stuck in my head. I want you to take me on a ride. And so he did that with the way he shot it and the way he told the story with the sort of hopscotch cuts, but also helped me as the performer to bring a sense of what's the agony in his eyes that tells the story without having to actually say it.
Mm. You feel that big time while you're watching it. So now I get to say thank you so much for joining us for this pre-screening Q&A, and to all of you, enjoy the ride that is The Surfer.
I hope you like it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks. Hope you enjoy the film.
And I really wanted to start with this particular question because I love film festivals. I love the fact that you get to meet a lot of special people that maybe you hold tight to. And that happened with you and the screenwriter of this movie, Thomas. Can you tell me about meeting for the first time and maybe the first thing you saw in him that made you think to yourself, like, that right there is someone I have to work with?
Yeah, so we met at Tribeca, the Tribeca Film Festival in 2012. We both had short films there, and we were just hanging out and we were getting on well and, you know, going for drinks and everything. And then it turned out that we lived about 30 meters from each other in Dublin. So we were like, oh, let's meet up for coffees and everything. And I remember we started like exchanging like favorite films, and he put me onto lots of interesting, like Dominic Mall. I hadn't seen any of his films before. And I was giving him recommendations for some like interesting Australian films and stuff like that as well. So I think we both were just into the same stuff, but I was busy on things and he was busy on things. It just took a long time for us to finally do something together. But he sent me this like 2-page outline for this project called The Surfer, and I remember reading it thinking like, oh yeah, this is something really interesting in this. And we were both big fans of Ozploitation films and new wave Australian films, and we thought this was a great opportunity to kind of do a contemporary version of one of these movies. So correct me if I have the timeline wrong, but that outline came 10 years after you met? No, probably about like 4 years after. Maybe I think it was like 2016, 2017. Ooh, in that case, I'm going to rephrase what I was going to ask you. What is the biggest difference between how you pictured this film back then when you first had that outline and the finished film everyone just watched? It's like probably completely differently. I mean, I was, I'd maybe made one film at the time, and Without Name, my first film, and I made some shorts and stuff like that. So like, I kind of just, all I thought was that it had potential, really. I could just kind of see that it was an interesting journey for one man across a few days, and to kind of do a very subjective experience type movie. And that was it, really. And that maybe we should do it in Australia. That was it. And then it took years later, before all the kind of things came together at the right time. Producer Leonora Darby was looking for something. We'd met before, and she'd met with Thomas before. And then I said, oh, well, there's this surfer story. We don't have a script yet. And she was like, oh, I really like this. We can finance development. So it got written, and then we were thinking about who to go out to. And that's how Cage came about. So was he number one on your list? And if you didn't get him, like, do you think you could have made this? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe Sam Rockwell or someone like that. But it would have been very different. Do you know what I mean? Not many people. There weren't many. We had like a pretty short list. And like at one point, like an early draft, he was Australian. He was supposed to be like an Australian who lived in like, say, Sydney, but he was moving to Western Australia, the other side of the country, and to buy back his family property. But there was something that was just sort of missing there. And also there was maybe like 5 or 6 actors in Australia that could play the role. And we were like, oh, maybe we're just limiting ourselves. And then once we started thinking about it, we were like, actually, we could really kind of amplify the whole outsider aspect if we thought about, making him be a character who left Australia when he was a kid and is coming back, and he's lost the accent, and he is local, but he's not local,
Just very effective aspect of this story. Leaning into Nick's work here a little, I had watched another interview you did where you did emphasize that even on the page, this character still came to life quite clearly, but he's just such a one-of-a-kind force. So do you maybe remember the first moment either in prep or on set when you saw him do something and then you knew with certainty, like, that right there is Nick Cage's version of the Surfer?
Yeah, totally. I mean, when he arrived, like we talked a lot in prep, and we had great calls, and we were working through the scripts and ideas and all that. But I hadn't met him in person; it was only over Zoom and stuff. But when he did arrive in Australia, it was all like Nick's on the ground, blah blah blah, and I had to go meet him. So like, I met him in like this weird garage place where we had our art department and wardrobe. It was like an industrial estate, and he was sort of in a state of semi-undress in a tiny little room. I didn't realize he's covered in tattoos, which he is. We got talking about what his costume, because he was about to try it on. And we got talking about The Woman in the Dunes, that movie, and how like I wanted his character to kind of connect it to the sand and the sandy colored suit and sandy colored shoes. And so we started like having a conversation about all of that, which was great. But then we went straight to set to shoot a scene, and he started delivering that monologue in the opening of the film. And just like there's a weird familiarity to his voice and his face and everything, and the way he can deliver dialogue is very unique. I don't know, like it just felt like, oh yeah, great. And when we were about to shoot, he was like, okay, the Surfer, here we go. And we did that, and then he was like, I'm now the Surfer. I'm like, yes, you are. We're in. Let's do this.
I am endlessly fascinated by his process, because I feel like every single collaborator of his I've ever spoken to has always emphasized, I guess, like the widest possible range of acting techniques he uses. Like he does everything and then some. So is there any particular technique or thing you saw him do that, I don't know, maybe you've never seen another actor do on one of your sets before?
Well, nearly all of it, yeah. Pretty much. I mean, he has like amazing ability to deliver big pieces of dialogue very clearly, but also quickly, which is something I've never seen an actor do before. But then obviously all the mad stuff, like, his thought process is amazing. So like, the rat scene in the film where we had this mechanical rat that would like, had a mouth designed for biting, which bit him on the hand. But then we had this soft rat that we used for when he's smacking against the side of the car and he flings it away. And he became like weirdly attached to this bouncy rat, and he put it in the scene where he's going around the car park looking for food, and he finds the rat and he picks it up and he's about to eat it. That was as far as it was supposed to go, but he was like, I remember him telling me, I don't know, I feel like I need to keep it. And he put it in his pocket. And we only had this one rat, and it was a pretty expensive piece of art departments. And normally art department will like keep those hero props in a box and keep them very safe. And they were like, can we have it back? And he's like, no, I need to keep it. So he kept it in his pocket, and he would go on to the next scene, walking around looking for the bird's eggs, and then following scenes later and the little tail dangling out of his pocket and everything. And a plan was formulating though, and I could tell that, because like we'd kind of developed a bit of a mischievous kind of camaraderie between ourselves. And then he started saying, yeah, I have this idea about the fight with Pitbull, where he was thinking of the Gene Wilder film, Sabrina, where takes a olive out of the thing and shoves it in the other guy's mouth and says, "Eat it." So like that kind of was very unique to me. That like taking those references from older films, and then bringing them into this film. They're almost like gifts that I think Nick will give a film if he has, if he has a real love for it. Like, so Eat the Rat, and That's a Good One. And when he's rambling through the car park talking about Clams Casino and Puttanesca Pasta, like they're all kind of things that just kind of come from this shamanistic ether that he has around him, you know?
So Nick is on just like another level. What is it like casting people around him? I'll start with Julian specifically. Like, what was it about him that made you think you would be good creative partners, but also like you could go toe to toe with Nick Cage of all people?
That was the challenge, finding somebody who was going to be his nemesis, that Nick almost wanted to be like. So I was looking for somebody who'd be handsome and charismatic, and Julian was suggested, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, Julian McMahon, he's Australian. Because I'd seen him in like soaps from when I was growing up in the 80s. Like he left Australia when he was about 19 or something and moved to LA. And he was actually a model at first for a while. But me and Julian had a chat about the character, and he really he really wanted to play this guy as someone who was really trying to help Nick's character. So that was really interesting in terms of it being kind of ambiguous as to whether he's the good, is he trying to be good, or is he actually kind of a nasty piece of work, or is he somewhere in between, And, but there was almost this homoerotic kind of thing between them as well, where like, Julian's, very beautiful man, and he's touching Nick's face and he's holding him and supporting him. And so there was this weirdness between them, which we didn't get to see until Julian arrived on set, and we'd already been shooting for a good while. So at this point was like that scene where Julian's offering Nick's character like food by his car, like burger, and trying to tempt him into like taking food and then leaving, getting out of there. And that was the first time they'd met when we were shooting that scene. So it was, Nick had already been, his voice had changed, and he was covered in blood and sweat and had no shoes. And then Julian just arrived in, to start making the movie, and had to go straight into that scene with like, there's an outbreak of these flying ants as well. So there's like flies crawling all over both of them. But it wasn't until then really that we got to see, there was no rehearsal time. So it was like, that was the moment where we were like, I was looking at the monitor going, oh yeah, great. This works. This, the energy between them and the dynamic between them. There was something interesting there.
That scene is electric. I'm just so hung up on outbreak of flying ants, you said?
Yeah.
Because like also you have that beautiful shot of the spider. There's the cicada. So I feel like something was coming together the way it was meant to. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe it made filming very difficult.
Well, I think the environment, it is gross with flies all over you. But I mean, Nick particularly had a lot of this glycerin all over his face. It was like fake sweat, but the flies really liked that.
Okay. I mean, that's something. Yeah. I wanted to broaden that question for the rest of the cast, because one of many things that really impresses me about your movie is that you have a pretty big ensemble around Nick, with a lot of actors who don't get all that much screen time, but it is of the utmost importance that they make a big enough impression so the whole thing comes together. Totally. So I know we don't have time to run through the entire supporting ensemble, but can you maybe pinpoint a couple where, I don't know, they showed up during the casting process and you're like, yes, you are perfect to give this movie that kind of effect?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's like Justin Rosniak, who plays the cop. He did a self-tape for me, and I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly the kind of vibe. Like a lot of the time, like people will play a role and send in a tape or an audition, and they'll play it a certain way, but it's kind of the actor's understanding of the material and your style. Sometimes they'll bring something to it where it might not be what you thought originally, but it's definitely embodying the kind of vibe of it. And Nick Cassim as well, who plays the bum, it's a very pivotal role because it obviously all culminates in that scene on the beach at the end. So trying to find someone who could play his character was called the Bum in the script. I don't think he's just a bum, but so like I thought he brought something amazing to it as well. He gave he did an amazing kind of read in a self tape, and but I was like watching loads of Australian like TV and movies at the time to try and find the right people for the film. So like they're all kind of, to me, they were almost like facets of Nick's the surfer's character as well. They were like parts of his psyche or something.
They all pop so nicely. I love that aspect of the film. And I'm obsessed with the visuals, but first I kind of wanted to lean into the vibe with, I don't know, I guess kind of an impossible question to maybe give a clear-cut answer to, but you wanted this movie to have a dreamlike feel to it. Like I felt off-kilter while watching it, and I think that was the intended effect. So what's it like for you trying to achieve something like that, but also knowing that your film is just grounded enough, it is just enough of a foundation to stand on?
Well, I mean, a lot of that I think is the structure of the script in the first place, that it starts quite grounded. He's very together kind of guy, and then bit by bit all of the kind of material aspects of his self kind of get torn away, and then it starts getting into more of his mind being kind of split apart, and also then his relationship with his father and what happened when he was a child, and him trying to come to terms with that, and the place and everything. So that's kind of where I start, and then get into the way of giving that impression to the audience through visual language, through color psychology, through sizes of shots and the construction of scenes, and the use of wide angle lenses, zoom lenses, and contrasting all of that together. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a process. By the time I'm finished it, to be honest, I can't really remember how I did it. Usually, because like it gets quite technical, and I'm kind of burrowed into my head with all these like things that I'm putting together, and I'll do little weird graphs and of like intensity between different things based on the script, and working with the cinematographer and everything. But then once you get into it and shoot it all, then you've just got all this raw material that you've almost taken back from the quarry that you need to go and sculpt then in the edit. So then the process of actually making the film really happens in the edit then with me and Tony Cranston, who I've been working with for years. And in this film in particular, it really lent itself, I think because it was this subjective experience that we were in his head the whole time, it gave us a lot of kind of flexibility to play with time and be a little bit more experimental, which was really good fun.
Was there any particular scene that required the most workshopping in the edit phase?
We cut and recut the trip scene where he smokes the pipe, and then the bit afterwards where he's talking to the estate agent about Jenny and all of that. Like that took a long time to get right. What are the scenes? I think like some of the stuff that we kind of discovered in the edit. I mean, I kind of had it planned a little bit, but like my editor starts when we start shooting. So the scenes are getting assembled. So we're talking, and the composer's already started as well. So he's started off the script and he's starting to send in sketches and stuff. So it's kind of coming together as you're making the film. So you start seeing these connections. And so some of the stuff like using eye lines to kind of transport Nick's character through time, like if he looks over, but then he's looking at himself, and then himself is looking back at him doing something. Do you know what I mean? So it kind of creates this fugue state effect, and his character kind of splitting apart. Some of that stuff was kind of really discovered in the edit and the shooting of.
I have so many questions about the visuals, but first I kind of wanted to ask a broader question about your collaboration with Radek, your cinematographer here, because the two of you worked together on Nocebo first. Yeah. Can you tell us something that you picked up working together there that came in handy here, but then also, I don't know, maybe a way that your collaboration evolved making The Surfer?
Yeah, I think it was just the time we spent together on Nocebo. we develop, like if you're working with collaborators as intensely as on a film, a lot of the time it's like almost like dating. You have to get to really know each other, and then on Nocebo we had planned a lot of stuff, and I was still I was storyboarding scenes and all this kind of stuff. But then we'd throw it out, but there was a lot of quite technical stuff in that film. And then on this film, because we'd worked together, we actually didn't want to kind of plan stuff as much. And maybe it was also because it was a single location, but we wanted to just sort of get in there, block it with the actors, block it ourselves if there was no one around. Like I'd act and we'd talk about where the camera was, and and figure it out. So then we'd take notes and we'd take photos, but we didn't kind of storyboard sequences. It was much more free, but I think that only became because we'd worked together before. And then I think that kind of energy then ended up in the film,
Weird follow-up question, which might not be how you thought about this, but you just mentioned to block, you would act in some of the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Is there
Radic would as well, yeah.
Is there any particular scene that you two had the most fun playing through?
Definitely. Yeah. I hope this clip surfaces at some stage. I did send it to Roadside, but Radic coming out. We were trying to figure out Nick coming out of the toilet after his shoes and his jacket had been stolen by the bum, and he comes out and stands on the glass and he's like, oh, and Radic came out and I was filming on my phone, and he came out and was like, ah, and then he's like, oh no, I'll do it again, and he comes back in, and then he was like, maybe I'll do it like this, and he gets down on the ground and kind of shuffles his bum along the floor for ages, going maybe it'd be good like this. It's like, Jesus Christ. The scene would have gone on for about 45 minutes. But all that kind of stuff was great fun though. And I still have it all. All these photos, these weird photos of me and Mark Boskel as well, the first AD. He'd come down and stand in or act,
This is why we need physical media with bonus features.
Yeah, exactly.
Another question about your collaboration with Radic, because I was reading in another interview that a lot of the movie was shot with two cameras, with one being very dedicated to smaller details.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about figuring out that you needed that to tell the story the way you wanted?
Yeah, well, once we knew we only had 5 weeks, it was a bit like, oh God, there's a lot to shoot. And I had this idea of having all of these kind of, almost using the actors' faces as landscapes as well, especially with this kind of, we're delving into masculinity in a way. And I wanted to I asked Nick and Julian to grow out their nasal hair and their ear hair and their eyebrows and everything. So if you might notice that they've got really long eyebrows in the movie and a lot of hair coming out of their nose and all of that. And so to get right in there with the camera and kind of really look at a man's face as a landscape in a way. So I can't really remember what the question was, but I've just been talking about nasal hair for ages now. Sorry, what was the question?
We were talking about the two cameras. The one focused on the details.
So we got a second camera because of the time constraints, but didn't really want to. I find it quite boring, that sort of cross shooting, just coverage stuff. So we got a young cinematographer from Perth, Tim, who came down, and he'd been shooting commercials, music videos and stuff like that. But we didn't want to just get a camera man. We wanted to get another DP and give them some experience on set. And so he mostly operated the second camera. And if we were shooting on the main camera, we'd set him up with the long lens to get right in for details like hands and dirty lips and mouths and sort of textures and details rather than the usual kind of cross shooting. But it most of it's in the film, because I really like that stuff.
I also have to ask you about color, which I know is very important in every single one of your films. I wish I had the opportunity to literally ask about every striking thing in your film, but can you maybe give us a couple of examples of why you chose a specific color? Things that come to mind is, the red that Julian wears, the blue that Nick changes into, that one character in that hot pink shirt that I can't take my eye off of.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. He's like one of the runts. Yeah, so like, I worked on a document at the beginning, like in prep, before anybody's even involved in the thing, like a kind of a color document, more for myself, really, to try and put shape on everything, give things reason. So things, once you get into filmmaking, sometimes everything gets so chaotic, and people are asking, what about this, what about that, and what are you thinking for this? And if you already have a kind of structure in your mind about the reasons why you're using certain colors, then it's easier. So there was yellow. I was using, I think, yellow to connect to everything to do with his childhood and his father, and the brochure, and his surfboard, and these kind of things. And then Julian's red hoodie. I think in the script it was supposed to be white, but I was thinking of early depictions of Jesus and the devil. Both wore red, and red is it's quite evocative of danger, So he's a dangerous character, and then you were saying about Nick changing into the blue. That was almost like, him becoming Mary or something, because there's this whole sort of weird biblical aspect as well. I mean, it's not a religious film or anything, but because it's all taking place across Christmas, in the lead up to Christmas, Julian's character has these disciples that he walks down the beach with, and so I wanted to, take some of the iconography of those paintings from Renaissance and kind of use them as a reason for using certain colors as well.
I can't wait to read all the think pieces that are basically saying, like, The Surfer is a Christmas movie.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
should be on all those lists. I'm going to squeeze in one more question, then we'll take one or two from the audience before we have to wrap this up. A lot of people here know that I like ending on this particular question as much as possible, because I think it's an important thing to think about. I love that in film and television we give each other awards. I do think we should keep doing that, but I often find that nobody tells themselves good job as much as they should. So I want to know something you accomplished making The Surfer that you'll always be able to look back on and say, I am really proud of what I did there.
Within the film itself. Yeah, I mean, actually, all of it really, because I really like the film. But two things really. One, working with Nick, because that's like, a Lifetime Achievement Award in itself. And then also the music. I think this is like my favorite music, the best score that I've worked with, the best, I really wanted to have like the music representing some of the imagery, in an auditory way. So the collaboration with Francois Tataz for me was just really rewarding, and we had like a really good time making the music for the film. So yeah, and I think the music ended up because he was writing as we were making it and cutting it. It all kind of inspired, the imagery was inspiring the music was inspiring the imagery, and so it was that was just really a joy, and I'd like to try and do that again.
I'm so impressed by how well it all comes together. Now hearing you talk about the process and how everyone's section kind of overlaps, I can understand why. All right, let's see if we can get two questions in. I'm coming right to the center there. It's the first hand I saw go up. Yep.
Hi. Speaking to Australian New Wave, was there one Australian film in particular that you took the most inspiration from in making this film?
Maybe like maybe Walkabout in terms of the editing. I love Nick Rogue's films in general, and I love the way they're cut. So yeah, probably Walkabout. Yeah, Long Weekend a little bit as well in terms of like nature kind of attacking him and all that kind of thing. But yeah.
All right, let's get one more. All right, pressure's on if you want to take us home with this.
Well, I don't know how conscious you were trying to make the most 60s movies since the 60s.
Yeah.
The scene between Roger Corman and the music and the cinematography. Because there's a lot of movies and a lot of art that necessarily draws on influences without being a little perk. But there's something about Burt Lancaster as a swimmer going through that kind of crisis, and of course, it's actually more upbeat by the end.
Yeah.
Than that movie turned out to be, because that was all
Yeah, that was like ending on pure misery. Yeah.
Most people might not remember that movie, but still.
Yeah, no, that was definitely an influence, like in Nick's performance and also in the colors and everything, and some of those extreme zooms as well that Frank Perri used. Yeah, but I mean, I think the 60s and 70s was a really interesting time in cinema because like they had all the technical know-how and great actors and everything by then in terms of like cinema history. But they were also at a point where like they started getting to experiment a little bit. Maybe it was all the acid and stuff coming out of the 60s, but like, you know, yeah, but like that resulted in some really amazing films, you know.
I'll sneak in one more question before we close this out. It's an unfair question. I'm asking you to choose your favorite child right now. What's your single favorite frame of your movie?
A frame. Shit. You know, God, that's like. So I'm kind of going right now.
The
Like,
question comes from
the
there being
thousands of
so many
frames.
good options.
Yeah. I mean, I really like. I actually really like the very last. It was a very tricky film to end, because it gets very dreamy up to a point, and then kind of pivots back into kind of a real threat with the bum and the gun and everything. But then didn't want to lose the slightly kind of dreamy quality. I wanted to wrap up the film in a way that was a little bit ambiguous as to what, you know, all of his problems that he'd had and all of the trauma and all of the things from his childhood and everything all kind of coming together with catching this wave. So actually trying to get that last shot of the film was a real challenge. And I remember I wanted it to just be simple and not like Nick on green screen surfing a wave or something terrible. So I remember though watching The Last Wave, the Peter Weir film, and the end of that film is just this shadow going over the actor's face. And so that's what we did in the end was this, like, we had a blue gel that we had Nick on. It looks like he's on the water, but actually he's on a Zumba ball, which I got from like a Zumba studio that morning because I think he was actually sick of going out in the water and afraid of sharks. Because it was actually quite cold, so we got the bits we needed, and then he's sitting on this board, and we put these like silvery gel underneath and moved that around, and had a water tank as well to kind of bounce light back on his face, and we sprayed water on his face, and then he's like moving on the ball like this, so it looks like he's on the water, and then as he turns to see the wave, we lifted this. It's a slow-mo shot at the same time as being a zoom. We lifted this blue gel in front of the camera, so it kind of feels like the light is going through the wave and creating a kind of bluish shadow across his face. And we reshot that about like 5 times across different days. It didn't take long, but it just wasn't right. And then we eventually got it. And so I think maybe that just ending for me was satisfying in the end.
I am absolutely obsessed with the power of movie magic, so I love that answer so much. I'm going to say huge congratulations on The Surfer, and thank you so much for being here and sharing some of your experience with us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.